You see that face on Prime? That's not the legendary coach the cameras love. That's a father finally seeing his son after a storm he couldn't control. For weeks, Cleveland fans were confused. One moment, Shedeur Sanders was the Browns' next big hope. The next, he vanished. No statement, no social posts, just silence. And when silence comes from someone as loud as Shedeur, you know something deeper is going on. Behind the scenes, people whispered. Was he benched? Was there tension in the locker room? Did he walk away? But the truth wasn't about football. It was about pressure, expectation, and the shadow of a name that means everything and nothing at the same time. Sanders. Because when your dad is Deion Primetime Sanders, the world expects you to shine 24/7. They don't see the exhaustion behind the confidence or the weight behind every headline. So when Shedeur disappeared, he didn't run away from Cleveland. He ran towards something real. A moment of quiet. A place where the noise couldn't reach him. And that's where this story really begins. Not on the field, not under the lights, but in the mountains of Boulder, where a son walked back into his father's world, not as a quarterback, but as a young man trying to remember who he really was. When Shedeur Sanders disappeared, it didn't happen with a headline. It started with silence. One day, he was showing up to Browns practice, smiling for cameras, posting cryptic messages on social media, and then suddenly, nothing. No updates, no workouts, no game day photos. Just a digital blackout that left fans asking one question: what happened to Shedeur? At first, people thought it was an injury. Reports surfaced that he'd been dealing with discomfort, but that explanation didn't hold up for long. Because if it was just that, why did the team go quiet too? Why did the coaches dodge every question about his return? And why did Deion Sanders himself, a man who's never afraid to speak his mind, go radio silent? Rumors exploded overnight. Some claimed Shedeur clashed with the Browns coaching staff. Others said he was frustrated sitting behind a quarterback who couldn't win. A few even suggested he was done with the NFL altogether, that he wanted to walk away before things got worse. None of it was confirmed, but the uncertainty made the mystery grow even bigger. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered about family tension, about how Shedeur felt torn between the business of football and the legacy his last name carried. They said he was mentally and emotionally drained, trapped in a system that didn't value him the way his father's program once did. Meanwhile, fans began to turn. Social media went wild with speculation. One comment read, "If this dude can't handle pressure now, how will he ever live up to Prime?" But what those fans didn't see was that the story wasn't about weakness. It was about survival. Because while everyone was searching for answers online, Shedeur was already on a plane back to Colorado, chasing something no headline could give him: peace. And what he found there would change everything that came next. Every son of a legend carries a shadow. But for Shedeur Sanders, that shadow wasn't just behind him. It followed him everywhere. From the moment he picked up a football, the comparisons started. The media didn't just see Shedeur. They saw Prime's kid. Every throw, every mistake, every headline was measured against Deion Sanders' legacy. A man who didn't just play the game, but changed it. And that's the weight Shedeur carried every single day. Not just the pressure to win, but to be perfect, to live up to a last name that had already become a brand. Imagine walking into a locker room where your father's name opens every door, but your own performance decides. Whether you get to stay, that's not privilege, that's pressure. Reports claim Shedeur often stayed late after practice, replaying missed throws over and over, chasing an impossible standard. Friends said he barely slept during the season. And while fans saw confidence, what they didn't see was the exhaustion of constantly proving himself, not just to critics, but to his father too. But here's the thing. Deion never wanted to be his shadow. Insiders say he pushed Shedeur harder because he saw something the world didn't. A young man who could redefine what the Sanders legacy really means. Still, that kind of mentorship can blur the line between love and expectation. And for Shedeur, that line started to break. The pressure, the criticism, the comparisons, it all became too much. So when he left Cleveland, it wasn't just about football. It was about stepping away from a name that had begun to feel heavier than the game itself. But what he didn't realize was that running from his father's shadow would eventually lead him right back to it, in the most unexpected way possible. When word reached Deion Sanders that his son had left Cleveland, it didn't come through a phone call. It came through silence. And that silence said everything. For a man like Prime, who built his life on confidence and control, not hearing from Shedeur hit differently. He wasn't angry. He was worried. Those close to the family say Deion knew the signs, the late-night calls, the tension before games, the pressure building behind the smile. So when Shedeur suddenly went off the grid, Deion didn't chase him down. He waited. Because sometimes a father knows when his son needs space, even if the world is watching. But after a few days, Deion made a move no one saw coming. He quietly left Boulder. No press, no cameras, no entourage. Sources say he flew straight to Colorado Springs, a small, private spot where Shedeur had been laying low. There wasn't a confrontation, no dramatic speech, just a moment between a father and son, one that outsiders would never fully understand. People who saw them that week said it wasn't about football at all. It was about reconnection. Deion reminded Shedeur of who he was before the critics, before the contracts, before the noise. And something changed after that. Not long after, the two were seen walking the Colorado campus together. No media coverage, no press conferences, just quiet steps through a place that once felt like home. And that's when the whispers started. Rumors that Deion had delivered a warning to Cleveland, demanding his son's situation be handled differently or not at all. Whether that's true or not, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a quarterback or a team anymore. It was about a legacy and the fight to protect it. Because when Prime finally speaks, the world listens. And this time, he didn't need a microphone to make his message heard. When Shedeur finally stepped back onto Boulder's campus, it didn't feel like a homecoming. It felt like a reset. The place had changed. New recruits, new energy, a different rhythm. But deep down, he knew this was where everything began. People on campus said he walked quietly that day. No entourage, no cameras, no designer shades. Just Shedeur, the kid who once lit up the field, now walking through the same halls that made him a star. Some players didn't even recognize him at first. Others just stared, almost in disbelief, wondering if this was really happening. And then came the moment that nobody expected. Deion waiting on the practice field, arms crossed, wearing that same calm, unreadable expression. For a second, neither of them spoke. Just a father looking at his son, and a son realizing how far he drifted from what mattered most. Reports say that conversation lasted over an hour. No yelling, no blame, just honesty. End of quote. Shedeur admitted the pressure had gotten to him, that the noise of the NFL had drowned out the joy of the game. And Deion, instead of lecturing, simply said, "Then it's time to find your peace again, son." Those words hit different. Because in that moment, Shedeur wasn't a quarterback or a brand. He was a young man being given permission to breathe again. Rumors claim Deion told him to take time before making any decision about returning to Cleveland, or even the NFL. He wanted Shedeur to heal, to rediscover the love that made him pick up a football in the first place. By the end of that day, one thing was clear. This wasn't the end of Shedeur Sanders' story. It was the pause before something bigger. A quiet before the storm. Because when Prime and Shedeur reunite, history tends to follow. What most people missed about Shedeur's disappearance wasn't the drama. It was the meaning behind it. Because this wasn't just a story about football or fame. It was a reflection of what happens when pressure, legacy, and expectation collide all at once. For years, Shedeur Sanders lived in the spotlight without ever asking for it. Every touchdown was followed by comparisons. Every mistake turned into a headline. And no matter what he achieved, someone always said it wasn't enough. Not for Prime's son. That's the part nobody talks about. The mental toll of always being a step away from your father's shadow. So, when Shedeur walked away, it wasn't weakness. It was courage, the kind most athletes never get to show. Because stepping back from the game you love takes more strength than playing through pain just to keep critics quiet. He needed to disconnect, to remind himself who he was when the cameras weren't rolling. And Deion, he understood that. For all the flash, for all the confidence, Prime has always known when to step back and listen. Behind closed doors, he wasn't Coach Prime or NFL legend Deion Sanders. He was just a father watching his son fight the same battles he once did. The meaning behind all this isn't about stats, wins, or contracts. It's about rediscovering purpose. It's about remembering that fame without peace is still emptiness. That's what Shedeur found in Boulder. Not an escape, but a reset. A reminder that even in a world obsessed with spotlight and status, sometimes the most powerful move is stepping out of it. And the next time Shedeur takes the field, whether it's in Cleveland or somewhere new, he won't just be playing for legacy, he'll be playing for himself. When word spread that Shedeur was in Boulder with his father, Cleveland went into full panic mode. The front office had no idea what to say publicly, and the silence only fueled the fire. Fans flooded social media, calling for answers. Sports analysts tore the organization apart, questioning how they'd let a potential franchise star just walk away. Inside the Browns building, tension was thick. Reports claim ownership was furious, not just because Shedeur left, but because of how it made the team look. They'd invested millions, hyped him as the future, and now that future was sitting in Colorado, not Cleveland. Coaches started pointing fingers. Some blamed the media for putting too much pressure on a rookie. Others whispered that the locker room had turned cold long before Shedeur left. And then came the real shocker. Whispers that Dee Haslam, one of the Browns' owners, had reached out directly to Deion Sanders. Not to negotiate, not to apologize, but to deliver a message. Sources claim she told Prime that if Shedeur truly wanted to play again, Cleveland would have to see commitment, or they'd move on without him. That warning, as insiders call it, was never confirmed publicly. But it didn't need to be. Within hours, it was everywhere online. Fans debated whether Cleveland had just burned a bridge or set a boundary. Meanwhile, Shedeur stayed quiet. No interviews, no statements, just training, alone, focused, rebuilding. For the Browns, the fallout was brutal. Ticket sales dipped, confidence in the coaching staff dropped, and the fan base that once called Shedeur their savior now questioned if the franchise had lost its direction entirely. But here's the thing. Sometimes a storm has to hit before the rebuild begins. And if Shedeur decides to return, it won't be as the kid under pressure. It'll be as the man who survived it. Because Cleveland might have thought they lost a quarterback, but what they really lost was control of their own story. When Shedeur Sanders finally returned to Cleveland, it wasn't with cameras flashing or headlines waiting. It was quiet. No entourage, no statement, no social media post. Just a man walking back into the storm he'd once stepped away from. The moment he entered the Browns facility, conversations stopped. Players looked up from their lockers. Coaches froze mid-meeting. Everyone knew what the media had been saying, that he quit, that he'd run, that he wasn't built for this. But standing there, calm and unshaken, Shedeur looked nothing like the kid they remembered leaving. He'd changed. His energy was different. The same fire that had once burned loud now burned controlled. He wasn't trying to prove himself anymore. He was trying to become himself. And that scared people more than any viral headline ever could. Reports say he went straight to the weight room. No PR, no press, just a quiet grind. Lifting, throwing, rehabbing, rebuilding. Teammates said they could feel it. The energy had shifted. The same guy they thought was breaking was actually reforging. When reporters finally asked Kevin Stefanski about Shedeur's return, his answer was short but telling. He's where he needs to be. No defense, no excuses, just respect. But the fans? They could feel it too. The narrative flipped almost overnight. What once looked like weakness now looked like wisdom. They weren't talking about him disappearing anymore. They were talking about how he came back stronger. Because that's the thing about Shedeur Sanders. He doesn't chase validation, he earns it. And in a league obsessed with control, he took back his own story. So when he finally stepped onto the practice field again, helmet on, chin up, and the Cleveland sky gray above him, the moment felt different. This wasn't a comeback, it was a rebirth. The kid who left to find peace had returned as a man, ready for purpose. And as he lined up behind center again, one truth became clear. You can't break someone who's already found himself. In the end, this story was never about football. It wasn't about stats, depth charts, or whether Shedeur Sanders would start next Sunday. It was about something deeper. The quiet battle between expectation and identity. When the world looked at Shedeur, they didn't see the young man. They saw the name, the legacy, the shadow of primetime. Every move he made was measured against a father who changed the game, and that's a heavy thing to carry at 22. But what Shedeur proved in walking away and coming back is that sometimes strength doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. It's found in the moments when the cameras are off, when no one's watching, when you're standing alone, trying to remember who you are beyond the noise. That trip to Boulder wasn't an escape. It was a reminder that greatness isn't built in the spotlight. It's built in silence. It's in the miles you walk to clear your head, the conversations with the one person who truly knows your heart, and the decision to keep moving forward even when the world doubts you. When Shedeur stepped back onto that field, it wasn't for validation. It was for himself. For the kid who started this journey with a dream and a last name that carried the weight of legends. Coach Prime once said, "Pressure creates diamonds." Maybe this was that moment, the pressure that doesn't destroy, but defines. Because one day, when the noise fades and the critics move on to their next target, the world will remember not how Shedeur left, but how he came back. And when that moment comes, when the lights hit, the crowd roars, and he stands in the pocket again, it won't be Prime's son they're watching. It'll be Shedeur Sanders, the man who found peace, walked through the fire, and came out shining brighter than ever.